Turning now to our climate in crisis, longer wildfire seasons, more extreme wildfire behavior. There's some impacts we've been seeing with our warming climate. So how can we mitigate that? The answer could be more of what you've probably seen around the Bay Area lately, prescribed burns. So let's bring in now our meteorologist, Rob Mayeda, with the details.
Yeah, we've been watching that, and the impacts of climate change obviously are accelerating some of the changes we've been seeing around the state. And when it comes to dealing with wildfires, the climate change has helped extend the days. It's been occurring with wildfires happening earlier in spring and later in fall. This can also have major impacts on air quality as well. So now the top priority for fire crews has been the protection of life and property, with many of these communities growing in these high-risk areas. And fire suppression itself has an unintended consequence of increasing the fuels for these fires. So we spoke to a lead author on a new report in collaboration of San Jose State's Fire Weather Lab and PG&E, who says the reduction of those fires and fire suppression itself has led to an increase in wildfire behavior consequences like we're seeing right now. And here's what he had to say.
We implemented a policy of fire exclusion. And so that initially worked. And so we have a century of buildup of fuels that is just sitting on the landscape. And then we have warming coming in on top of that, which means that when we do have fires, they can be much more catastrophic because there's much more fuel to burn. They produce much more smoke. They're much harder to contain, more likely to break into, adjacent communities.
Okay, so that's the last thing we want. That's the last thing we want to hear. Is it possible to manage wildfire intensity even in a warming climate, or is this just more of what we're going to be seeing, or potentially even more extreme wildfires?
Yeah, that's the hard part of this equation, right? We've shifted into this future now of long-term damage to forest and ecosystems by these high-intensity fires, moving out of the low-intensity fire era. Increased fuel reduction, by the way, we're talking about a boost of another 600,000 acres per year on top of the state goal of 1 million acres per year. But if that target is reached, we could see a pretty significant change and a potential beneficial change when it comes to that. The study was looking at that and how that might make an impact moving forward.
What we show is if you were to do that on 1.6 million acres per year in California, which is kind of similar to what the state's articulated goal is of 1 million acres per year, then you can actually have a future of reduced wildfire intensity even as it gets warmer. So this is not a situation where we're looking at increased wildfire intensity regardless, and then fuel reduction can mitigate that increase. We're actually talking about a future where you could potentially have reduced wildfire intensity overall if you were to scale up this fuel reduction to large levels.
And this is why it's important. Our future, if we don't make no changes, this study also found that future wildfires would be 25 more intense than they are today. Now, with that aggressive fuels reduction in that same time frame by 2090, you could see a reduction of fire intensity in terms of radiative output, a drop of 31%. So that is a significant change. They point to this. The fire weather scientists are saying that this is an important part of that equation, managing fuels in California to lower wildfire intensity like we've been seeing more of over the last couple of decades.
Okay. Everything counts.
It does.
All right, Rob, thanks so much.